All right, we are live. How's everybody doing? Welcome to episode 51 of the north of Ontario in Orillia, Ontario, cottage country. I'm really excited for today. I have been listening to our guest's different bands that he's known for, the Black Pumas and Hard Proof. I've been listening to them all week, and man, oh man, I instantly fell in love with both of these bands. And as I was cutting my lawn for, well, the first time really this past week, I've just been putting the latest Black Pumas EP on in these earbuds here. We are actually waiting for Stephen Bidwell to join us here, waiting for him to connect because he's got some things going on, which is really exciting. So it's nice to see that folks are working and doing some things musically. So I am going to bring on Mr. Steve Bidwell. How are you, sir?
I'm all right. How you doing?
I'm doing great here. Thanks for joining us. Do you hear me okay? How's the volume?
I do. The volume's good.
Good stuff, man. So I'm telling you, it's really nice to actually virtually meet you after listening to you play. It's funny, when you listen to a drummer or musician play, you think that you have an idea of their personality and because of certain tendencies and things that they may play, but I really didn't know what to expect. But I have to comment that you have such a great groove, a great sound, and a tremendous amount of different resources, drummers, musicians that you draw from, that is just so musically appropriate for the music that I listened this week. As I was saying just before you came on, cutting the lawn, I had the Black Pumas and Hard Proof in these earbuds here, and it was just so great, making a normally sort of mundane task much more enjoyable. So thanks so much for taking the time and joining us.
Wow, thank you. That was all incredibly flattering.
Well, I tell you, you sound great. So I wanted to ask you, what have you been doing the last year, and are things up and running for you now?
I mean, I've done a little bit of everything. I've done a bit of like home recording. Like as soon as things got kind of locked down. I'm sorry, one monitor's got to go. Like I think the first person who hit me up to do any recording was Adrian Quesada from Black Pumas. He had some library music he needed to finish. I don't know if you know what library music is. It's just like background music, but he had a deal with a big publisher doing stuff like that, and he needed drums on some things, and he's like, can you record some things at home? And I was like, well, yeah. And I mean, I hadn't done anything like that in a minute, but I, plugged everything in, made sure it worked, and got to work on some tracks for him. So that was pretty cool. Just it's a lot of replacing loops and replacing parts, and they wanted things to swing a bit more than the loops did. So that was cool to just have something to dive right into like that. And I mean, the students I had, I took remote, and most of them were really into throwing money at their home rig. Like a lot of people went and bought that the Yamaha EAD. I still don't even have one of those, but all my students do right now. So that was cool just for the that workflow. So I mean, keeping up with a few students. I had a bit of writing work, like writing work trickle in, and just stayed busy. And I mean, I have a young son, so this whole time was way more about him than anything else. Like, I mean, God bless his preschool for trying to do remote learning at the beginning, but he doesn't. This is a blessing and a curse. He doesn't like screens or television, so he did not take to, you know, remote classroom kind of stuff. So we were just like, we're just gonna do what you want to do, and it's I mean, I think it's worked out. It's not without its challenges, but I mean, that was the most important gig going on this whole time. And I
That's
mean,
amazing.
like Black Pumas management really, really crushed it, just finding every opportunity they could in the last year. Like, I gather they got together every week and were like, okay, who do we know? Who can we partner with? Who do we know at this network? Where, so through their handiwork, we stayed really visible in the last year. And some smart person at the label decided to re-release the record in a special edition version, and that's the one that got nominated for the Grammy. So there's just a lot of people hitting a stride and really, really pulling it together in a strange, tough time, So
Wow, it's nice to hear compliments for a label and for management, because it's usually stuff you don't hear. You usually hear that, it's been, they haven't really helped you and kind of left you out to dry. But that's amazing that those folks have put their heads together and actually given the band maybe some momentum, and that they certainly wouldn't have had otherwise. And really smart to do the re-release of that, because yeah, I don't know of other people that are doing things apart from trying to release a new track here or there, but to re-release and to keep you visible. Oh man, that's amazing. What kind of writing? You were saying writing. I wanted to ask you, what do you mean by that?
A friend of mine needed some like SEO based technical writing. I have a funny little resume. I don't know how much you Googled me, but I'll come up in Modern Drummer a lot because I've been writing for Modern Drummer on and off since about 2008. So I have that little skill set, little drum journalism, So I had a lot of that on my plate for a minute. It was good just keeping the family afloat. And the whole day is like, I trade off every couple hours with my wife, and then in the evening I was just writing and doing that. So it's a good little skill to have picked up. I think like it'll work well on a tour bus or in a green room, or when you're just waiting. A lot of tour is just waiting. So like having programming or something else you could do during the day is like, it's good. I mean, if you don't have some stake in the publishing empire or whatever, then like you might want to find something else. And obviously I'm going to try and figure out how to do lessons from hotel rooms and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's been interesting for sure. I used to pretty well just teach between 15 to 20 students here in the studio, and then I had a couple of remote ones because they really are far from here. And now I think I still have 14, 15 a week, which has been amazing. I can't wait for them to come back in person. They're excited about that. But I'm surprised just how good it is. It's harder, I find, to do remote lessons because I do videos, and then as well, like just to recap the material to make sure they understand, and write notes, make sure they get that. And I need to keep organized so that I remember what we did. So everything's in a binder, but you got to make, things happen. Otherwise, what are you going to do? So,
yeah, I think it's worked pretty well for me, but I can see it maybe not working well with every student. Like if you got a new student and you really need to talk technique and grip and things, like you really want to be there over their shoulder. So luckily the ones I have right now are more developed and we're working on like really specific things, and their audio is good enough that I can hear like if the grip is questionable for a moment or something. So
right.
I don't
That's
know.
good.
It's going
That's
okay.
good. Yeah, the EAD 10s are they're flying off the shelf. I don't have one. I have a recording with a bunch of microphones that I dove into a year or so ago. And I love doing that, and just really fun playing different things and recording and all that good stuff. I wanted to go back to the beginning of your musical journey. Where did you grow up? When did you start playing? Was it music and drums first? We want to know.
Let me think. So I was born in Washington, D.C., and I grew up 20 minutes south in a Virginia suburb called Reston. And I think my parents had a pretty cool record collection for the time. So I remember a lot of Beatles and stuff. I remember my mom used to plop me down in front of the record player with Sgt. Pepper on, and it was very soothing for me for some reason. So like, I remember that, lots of Beatles and just good records. And my family aren't like musical people, but they're all really into music. Like, do you remember when I say not musical people, I mean, you have a delightful speaking voice, I must say, but I have this monotone thing going on, and it definitely comes from my family. So like when we would sing Christmas carols or Happy Birthday, it was like that Saturday Night Live sketch with Tonto and Frankenstein, and I forget who else. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember that one, but I don't know. So not musicians necessarily. My mom played a little piano and played in church, and I know my brother had piano lessons, but big music fans. I had two older brothers, so when you have an older brother, that's often any older sibling is going to influence your musical taste. So
right.
Like, one of them being real into classic rock, and then one of them being into metal and stuff, and that all got kind of passed on, and I found all my own stuff. But I don't think the drums came first. It just was always all about music and listening to the radio. I know I got a drum kit for my 6th birthday. Technically, it was a Noble and Cooley. Noble and Cooley made a lot of toy drums.
Right. Go ahead.
I didn't know this till recently, but it was a Muppet drum kit. It had Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem and Animal on the front head. So Muppet-related drum kit for my 6th birthday. I seem to remember playing that in front of my preschool class to a Beatles record or something. The heads were all paper, and they were done. They were done in a week. So didn't really think of that for a long time after that. But I mean, there's a friend of mine who swears he has, and I haven't heard from this guy in a minute, but he swears he has Super 8 video of me playing pots and pans in his parents' kitchen when we were like little kids. So I don't doubt that. He's kind of an archivist, and he just has everything. But yeah, I don't know. The inclination was sort of always there. And then I don't know how old you are, but I was a child of the 80s, so there was a lot of great music going on.
Indeed. I was a teenager in the 80s, so I'm definitely older than you. But I had the same, well, not a Noble and Cooley drum set, but I had a drum set, I think when I was about 4.
Yeah.
And they were paper heads. And I remember thinking, these sound terrible. I really thought, I remember that. And then they broke, and then I don't know what happened to them. We moved, and then they went with us, but seriously, I remember thinking, man, that sounds paper. Well, of course it sounds paper. It sounded terrible. That's amazing. When did you get real drums?
Okay, this is debatable. 7th grade, me and my middle brother, split a drum kit, and it was I say debatable because it was a Remo PTS kit. So I don't know if you remember those, but they had tree tune heads that clip on to the drum shell, and I guess it's really convenient, if you gotta store them inside each other. But sonically, after a while, they weren't so great. They couldn't add any tension. So those probably we went about as far as we could with those for like a year or so, and then you should never ever split an instrument purchase with your sibling. Let's just say there were some fights. Anyway, then like ninth grade, there's a punk band from my hometown. They're called Avail. They got like Warped Tour big a couple years later, but their drummer decided to switch to singing, and I bought his drum kit. So that was like ninth grade. I think that was a Tama rock star, like everybody had in the 80s.
They did. Did you do lessons at that point? Or were you learning on your own? Were you playing to music? How did you learn to play?
I know I did school band in 5th grade. I got a practice pad and sticks, and that, like, the buzz roll felt really natural and stuff. But for some reason, I bailed in 6th grade. I don't have any recollection why. But then, we got the drum kit in 7th grade, and then I decided I should probably take lessons. We found a guy at a local store, and I took with him from like 8th grade on. And he was an interesting guy. He's real into like fusion, so he kind of passed on the fusion. Like, I still have the first tape he made me. It had Birds of Fire on one side, and it had Brand X, Unorthodox Behavior, Phil Collins on the other side. So he was into that kind of stuff. So kind of turned me into a Cobham head. But I mean, he was a really awesome dude. He really hit me to a lot of great music like that. And I think the downside is like teaching at a store where you had to teach lessons on pads, which you ever had to teach in a store?
Yep. I think we are stuck here, folks. We are going to try and reconnect here. Stick with us here. The internet is a funky thing, as you know, from many episodes and this is definitely doing it without a net, flying without a net, but I'm all good with that. So we're just going to wait for Steve to reconnect here. And if you wouldn't mind telling us where you are watching from, and maybe some of the episodes that you really enjoyed, if you wouldn't mind. If you've seen some of the past episodes, let us know which ones have been your favorite ones, and maybe even some suggestions for future guests. So while we wait here, just please let us know where you are watching from, and let us know who you'd like to see on the show. And this has been fascinating. I love hearing these different guests' journeys thus far of who they were influenced by, how they learned, how the drums and music came into their lives. It's to me, it's a fascinating thing, and everybody has a different story, and I love hearing it. Love reading autobiographies, love reading different stories about people and success stories. So if anybody is indeed watching, can you please let me know that you're still hearing me? It appears as though we are live, but I just want to make sure. And yes, I'm having such a good time chatting with Steve, and he is a very funny, understated. There we go. I think we are. So Steve, if you happen to be there, please just reconnect again, and we can continue our chat. And unfortunately, we were frozen and adding to stream. Yeah. There we go.
That was an actual power blip.
Oh,
That was weird.
yes. There's all kinds of things that happened on one of my shows a year ago where I had no Wi-Fi. Had to go into the house. It was hey, you do what you need to do. Playing drums and playing shows is like that too. It's all live and there's no net. So,
yeah.
Anyways,
I've been wondering
awesome.
about the.
What's that?
Where did we leave off? Toy drums, Remo.
You
PTS?
were chatting.
Mhm.
You were talking about your drum teacher hipping you to some Billy Cobham, some Birds of Fire, and Brand X. That's pretty unbelievable stuff for a young, impressionable musician. So, and that stuff, you really dug it. All right.
Just in case we need a backup here.
Hey, that's smart. Nice.
I'm gonna see if this works. Are we there?
I'm here. Yes, sir. There we go. You look like you're coming back.
That is bizarre.
I hear you. So we are with just we're talking about your drum teacher and Birds of Fire and Brand X.
Yeah. He was quite a character. I mean, I know we worked out of a lot of books, like, your rockin' bass drum. I still teach kids out of that. That's
wow.
Good book. Stuff like that, and then more fusion related books and four-way independence. Four-way coordination with the blue cover.
Oh.
I should see if I still have that. Yeah. A lot more. I seem to remember covering a lot more like patterns than styles and stuff. So like, I eventually went off to music school not knowing how to play a bossa nova. Or, I don't know. It was taught me a lot of things. And plus, it was the 90s, so there was a lot of interesting music, a lot of interesting drummers going on.
Mm-hmm.
We sort of had a music scene in my little town. Like, there were these concerts they put on at the community center. I remember playing one. Like, if you joined a band in the DC suburbs, it was quite possibly either like a hardcore punk band or maybe a go-go band.
Right.
I got found out by the hardcore kids first. So like, when there's only two guys in your class that have a drum set, like you get whoever will show up, I guess. So I ended up playing in like hardcore bands and stuff like that. And just lots of messing around, making bad rap albums and the things you do in the suburbs when you're trying to learn an instrument and just have fun and whatnot. So
did you dig that hardcore stuff? Was that stuff that you enjoyed listening to as well?
Oh, obviously. I mean, I loved like trying to play fast. Like, I think one of the first CDs I remember getting is it was the first Bad Brains album, and it was one of the re-releases, and it was in a long box. You're old enough to remember when CDs came in a long box.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, dude.
It was one of those. And just amazed with what they could say and do in 23 minutes or however long that record is. And like those, before they met their singer and like decided they were going to be a punk band, they were like trying to be Return to Forever. Like, so those dudes had like fusion chops. They just kind of went this other way with it and just did everything a little better than everybody else. But I don't know. I mean, that was one thing going on, and then in the world of drummer friendly things, was definitely into Primus at the time. I don't remember the last time I listened to them, but they were a big deal to me, and Herb was a big deal to me back then. I mean, there's lots of other fun stuff going, like, you know, your Jane's Addiction, stuff like that. I know I was I went to the first Lollapalooza tour, so I saw like, I mean, all in the same day. I saw like Sim Kane with the Rollins Band and Will Calhoun with Living Color and Budgie with Susie Sue and you know, Stephen Perkins and Body Count and all those. I'm probably blanking, Butthole Surfers, lots of other stuff, but like that whole alternative music thing kind of happened when I was in high school, so there was a lot of different stuff going on, and plus, I mean, hip hop was a big deal that I was just developing kind of as I grew up, because I'm about the same age as that whole musical development. And I don't know, I had a good group of friends, and we were all into all kinds of different stuff, and so we learned to drive. We would just, somebody got their car on a Saturday afternoon, we'd go record shopping, just try to outdo each other and find the coolest, most random stuff. So that's just the kind of, you know, what I remember about high school, I guess.
I miss those days, going and actually shopping for music, going to in Toronto. I'm north of Toronto, so we would go to Sam's Music, or we would go to the various big stores, and or even some of the smaller stores, the vinyl shops, and you would find some unbelievable, like, rare stuff. I've got a lot of music in here, which is, and I listen to an awful lot of it, and I miss that. It's not the same thing. It's convenient for sure, going, you know, and saying, oh, I want to find out what the Black Pumas sound like. Boom, and I have you. But we have a great record store. At least we did, up until, I don't know if it's still around. I hope it is, because we're still on lockdown here. In really, it's amazing the vinyl that they have. I bought some great jazz records and some all kinds of things. So it's really cool. What a great time though, and a whole bunch of disparate influences, right from the hard rock stuff, combining with your utilizing some of those techniques with speed and accuracy that those drummers were displaying at the time, you know.
And I probably have none of that anymore.
And it's funny, when I hear you play, I would not have known that would have been in your vocabulary, because I'm listening to you in just those specific bands. But that's pretty awesome. Now, when were you exposed to first of all the Afro funk stuff, and when were you exposed to the soul stuff? Because it sounds like you've been playing that for a long time. That's and when did you know that you had that kind of groove?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, okay, roundabout story, and there's a teacher I'm leaving out. I started doing school band again, but not until 10th grade. So I joined school band in 10th grade, and we had this hardcore band director, interesting cat. He had like 6 music degrees, and at some point he was a trombone player. He had been in Buddy Rich's band at some point. He may have had some beef with drummers in general after that experience. I don't know. There's some strong whiplash vibes come up when I start remembering high school band. But at the same time, he had really high expectations for everybody. But anyway, his first 2 degrees came from West Virginia University, and when I started showing interest in going to music school, he pointed me there, and I applied a bunch of other places, but it's like WVU had a very strong world music program at the time, and I really wanted more of that information. So when I got there, the first ensemble I did there was an African drum ensemble. So I did that the whole time I was there, and that was real traditional folkloric, mostly West African stuff, but our teacher studied all kinds of other African music. So we did, everything south of the Sahara, I guess. So there'd be, he was Ghanaian, so there were a lot of Ghanaian pieces and dances, and a few Nigerian things, and some East African stuff like the East African xylophone music. And I know we did South African music at least once, but he just had a real good approach, and I did that the whole time I was in college. And I don't know if somewhere in college, like, they started reissuing Fela Kuti records. So I started really checking those out. One night I was actually house sitting for my professor, and he had a Fela video that I probably borrowed and dubbed. And I remember watching that over and over again. But that's kind of the way I got into that part of African music. And then I just always thought, like, me and my roommates would put on Fela records at parties. It'd be like alternating hip hop records and Fela. Fela's son Femi was also kind of coming into his own as a band leader by the time I was finishing college. But we'd put that on at parties, and like people would love it. And I was like, it's like something that I should do someday. But I just never put the pieces together until I got to Austin, which was probably 6 or 7 years later. Like, actually, the first time I got called for an Afrobeat gig, it was when I lived in Pittsburgh, and it was a party at a frat house on the CMU campus. That was total pickup gig, and total just like, play something like this, 1, 2, 3, and then I think we got paid in scotch, like Johnny Walker Blue or something. It's pretty nutty. But then some point around 2008 in Austin, I met a few people who were into it, and we thought we'd give it a try. And then the band's still there, mostly. We're trying to figure out what to do next. But I guess that's 13 years later. So,
and that's Hard Proof, the band Hard Proof.
Yeah.
And why is the band called that?
I didn't name it. I believe there was a kind of rum named Hard Proof. This is like one origin story I fail at. I can tell you everything else about how the band formed, but I have no recollection of where the name came from. But I mean, if you're gonna name a band, just name it something easy for people to pronounce, like, so they don't have to think about it.
That's great. And now, were you a founding member of this group?
Yeah, and then, I mean, it kind of co-led it, I guess. I've ended up shouldering a lot of the managerial stuff over the years. So I did a lot of the booking and all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I was the lead emailer, let's call it that.
Sure. That's when did Gretsch drums enter your world?
Okay, so over your shoulder there's a Tony poster. I see that Tony with the yellow drums. So in it was either 92 or 93. My teacher said I lived 4 miles from a venue called Wolf Trap, which is like the summer home of the National Symphony. And he said, okay, this band, this Miles Davis tribute's coming to Wolf Trap. You should see if your folks will take you. So me and my dad went. And so it was the second quintet with Wallace Roney on trumpet instead of Miles, but, Herbie and Ron and Wayne and Ron Carter and Tony. And sure enough, Tony had the yellow drums with the 3 floor toms, and he played at least 3 solos that night, like long ones. And I was pretty dumbfounded. I mean, I was sort of into jazz already, like sort of checking it out, but this was like, I want to do that or try to do that, So like, and it still to this day, whatever I heard that night was way above my head. And I've tried to find like a recording of it, but in all the Miles Davis taper groups, like I could never find a copy of that show. I'd love to hear it because it's like the night that my life went wrong or something. But he was just crushing, and he's a weird place to start for jazz drummers, but I kind of worked backwards, just figure out who he had checked out and came before him, like, your like Max and Philly Joe and everybody he had really checked out. I don't know, and that's the first big deal Gretsch guy show I recall seeing.
Good one to start with. That's for sure.
Yeah, that'll kind of ruin everything. I mean, he was just so epic.
I saw him in '92 as well in Toronto. I was 25, and it was pretty crushing. And I was maybe 15 feet from his drums.
Oh,
and
wow.
every drummer in Toronto was there. Some well-known other musicians were all clamoring around, but it wasn't with that group. It was with Wallace, but with Tony's quintet. They were ridiculous, and they introduced him incorrectly both sets.
What?
The Joe Williams quintet, and poor Tony just rolls his eyes.
Oh,
and
God.
then they called it the Tony Williams quartet, but it was a 5-piece band. But my friend has a bootleg, and I still haven't heard it. He was there that night. I didn't even know him for many years, and he recorded it that night with I guess a tape recorder. I've yet to hear it, so I'd love to hear that. I had Cindy Blackman on a few months ago, Cindy Blackman Santana, and she said, I would very much love, if you ever get a copy of that, to hear that. So, yeah, that'd be cool to hear what he was like with that tribute to Miles. Man, that would have been. Yeah, it's a tough place to start. I did too. I started, Tony was the first, and then I'm like, I don't get half of this stuff, but he played jazz like a rock drummer and rock like a jazz drummer. I've heard that told.
Yeah.
But then, like you, I went back. Sorry.
Wait, so was the band you saw with Mulgrew Miller on piano?
Mulgrew Miller, yep. Ira Coleman, I think, was the bass player.
Like off the Tokyo Live record, that band.
It was just silly.
He had a really crushing band of his own there for most of the late 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I loved it. Loved hearing those big yellow Gretches with those black dots and those open flam triplets and those single strokes. They didn't have paper heads on them, which is nice. They had the black dots. So
no, and that he is the only guy that could pull that sound off. It's crazy.
And Paul DeLong does that. A terrific drummer from Toronto. He's got some big yellow Gretches and black dots, and Paul does a great job of that too. So you saw Tony, you went back and investigated. Did you go back and listen to Art and Max and Philly Joe? And did you check those guys out?
Oh yeah. I mean, by the time I got to college, I had let me think. I was a classical percussion major, so you had your classical percussion lessons. And then I took drum set with a guy named Al Rubleski. He's a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania guy. He's Morgantown, West Virginia is like an hour south of Pittsburgh. But He was a great player. I remember him steering me to a lot of like Max and Clifford Brown, and I mean, Pittsburgh is still a very hard bop oriented town, so kind of pushed me to that really swinging stuff. Um, yeah, that's another teacher. I haven't talked to either of these teachers I've mentioned in like years. I should just, because
Yeah.
this whole lockdown time has been a great time for a lot of surprise phone calls or just like checking in on people you haven't talked to in 20 years. But I should see what that guy's up to.
Yeah.
He had great hands, and he did a very mean Joe Morello impersonation. Really wish I had talked technique with him a lot more because of that. But he definitely got me through the styles and really checking a lot of different stuff out.
So you have 2 degrees, correct, in classical percussion? That's awesome.
That's undergrad, and it's a funny random bit of academic advising missteps. Let's call it that. It's like the head of my department changed about 3 times. So we had the guy I started with, and then like my junior year, it was Dr. Tim Peterman, and Shi Wu, and she's a marimba. She teaches at Marimba Genius. She teaches at Northwestern now, but her first job after North Texas was just teaching marimba at WVU for a year. But both of them left after my junior year, and then a different guy came in, and then another guy came in. I graduated under the other guy, but I mean, my memory is that like some goalposts on their level system were never really set. So like, let's just say I was taking forever to get my levels on timpani, right? I don't know if you went to classical percussion school, but
No.
I needed like a few more semesters of timpani, apparently, or something like that. I was mostly a drum set guy, but I was in a performance track program where it was a 10-level system, but they were very nebulous levels, let's say. So, I mean, if you go to other schools, I guess they probably fixed this since then, but it was like, if you go to North Texas, I think it's like you have to be able to play this piece and you have to transpose it at sight, all of this to get a level 4. And if you can't do that, you don't move on and blah, blah, blah. But I just kept playing pieces and my levels would move mostly. And then at some point it was like, okay, it's going to take you 3 more semesters of lessons to get this performance degree. And I was like, okay, I'll just go for the BA, which is more coursework. Like I had to take a few semesters of Spanish and stuff. And like,
Right.
took a lot of lit courses too. I was like, I'll just take whichever degree I get first. And I ended up finishing them both at the same time. Like I did the senior recital, and the guy said, the professor at the time was like, okay, you got your levels. You can get out of here. It's like, great. So I got 2 pieces of paper. They both mean like basically the same thing. But I learned a lot about academics and advising in that experience, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
That's
that's a lot of schooling and a lot of time. So what was your goal? Did you have a goal in the back of your mind that you wanted to be a drum set player for a group, or did you want to be a session guy, or did you want to be a freelance guy? What was your goal?
I mean, at the end of the day, I just wanted to play and teach. And if somebody called me for anything, I wanted to be able to cover anything. Like,
yeah.
So I didn't necessarily want to be, didn't want to specialize in one thing, I guess. And I mean, by the time I was out of there a couple months, I realized like, I'm probably not going to get to play mallet percussion again for a while. I could teach it if I had to. And I did, like I taught a bit of marching percussion a few years out of there. And definitely taught a few pits and a few drum lines. But it's like drum set's kind of my thing. And then when I left Morgantown, I ended up going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for a couple of years. And in what I would call a long process of unlearning or relearning, I just set up in the basement and played to a lot of records. So like I was really into jazz at the moment, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna drink this pot of coffee, and I'm gonna check out Philly Joe's ride pattern for 3 hours or whatever, or just figure out what Art Taylor's doing on this record, and really just get into the time, you know. And I mean, and probably should have only lived in Pittsburgh for a year, but I spent 3 years there, and I did a lot of different things. I taught lessons at a store, and I led a little jazz fusion-ish group. I worked with a lot of steel drummers in the summertime, so
Wow.
lots of calypso and stuff. That was the other big thing at WVU. There's very world music centric, so they had the African ensemble, steel band. Actually, he passed away a few years ago, but this guy Elie Manette from Trinidad, who invented most of the steel drum instruments, he was in residence there. So
Wow.
like when I played guitar pan in the steel band, I was usually playing on his pans because he was a guitar player, guitar pans. But so I had a lot of friends like learn how to tune and build from him. So, and that meant like some of my other friends in Pittsburgh were WVU people, and in the summer we just got a lot of patio and barbecue gigs playing, you know, calypso and stuff like that. And then I moved to the South, and I haven't met that many pan players since then. So
Yeah. It's such a great sounding instrument, you know. It's beautiful sounding. It sounds like it's happy music and joyful, you know. Must feel amazing playing that. I've never played it except for with a recording, and I can imagine I get excited just playing along with the recording. Imagine that energy you're getting back playing with people, and for people who love that music. That's really fun.
Yeah. One day before I die, I need to go to Carnival in Trinidad and see the big panorama competition where like those bands are huge, and it's a beautiful sensory overload. And the way it works is like somebody will write a calypso, but then a pan arranger will write like a 10-minute version of that. So like, and there'll be like 3 or 4 modulations and all kinds of hot licks and stuff. And it's a really, really impressive art form. I've just always been blown away by it.
That's amazing. And I know very little about playing. I know a few standard calypso patterns, but are there a lot of variations? Are there a lot of different ones?
Yeah. You got your traditional calypso, and you got soca. You got soca rockers, which is like it has a backbeat on one beat. I'm trying to think of who's written the book on this. Who's the guy at Berkeley? Mark.
Oh,
shoot. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Let me just
Walker?
find.
Mark
Yeah,
Walker?
Mark Walker. Like that guy. I actually remember when I was a freshman at WVU, Caribbean Jazz Project came, and he gave us a clinic. And I have some memory of him tuning our studio drum set while I know Allison Miller was there. Do you know Allison Miller?
I know that name. I don't know who that is really.
She was a senior when I was a freshman, but she went on to play with like Natalie Merchant and Ani DeFranco and Dr. Lonnie Smith and just At 22, she had a very strong Tony impersonation, like when she
Wow.
left. Um, but I have some memory of watching her or Brian Wolf, this other great drummer, playing at this Mark what's his face clinic. I
Mark
don't
Walker.
remember
Yeah.
the Mark Walker. His book on like Afro Caribbean drumming, it has a good rundown of all those grooves. Like, I don't know if he ever did a video, but he's kind of the cat. Like he plays with Andy Narell, who's like king of the pan
Oh,
world.
yes. Yep.
Um, I talk about this, but I haven't touched any of that music in years, as much as I love it. Just kind of got into other things.
Well, you've been busy. So why the move to Austin?
Okay. So you're going to have a quiz later on my complicated backstory. So
No.
I hope you've been taking notes. So after 2 years in Pittsburgh, I decided like I need to move, and grad school is probably the best, easiest way to move. So I started auditioning for master's programs in jazz studies, and I got in at a school in Philly, but they weren't offering enough money. I sent a tape to the University of New Orleans because I wanted to study with Johnny Vodakovich, and they said, "Yeah, come on down." They did not initially offer me any money, but last minute they offered me a full ride. So it was like on 10-day notice, I just moved to New Orleans. So good deal. I was there for a year, and then we had a week of classes the second year, and then Katrina happened. So I evacuated with a roommate I'd lived with for like a week, maybe 2 weeks. Took us 17 hours to get to Houston. That's normally a 6-hour drive. But anyway, the next day we went to Austin. Somewhere in there, I bumped into an ex-girlfriend, or she figured out I was there, and we rekindled for like a year and a half, long enough for me to promise I would move to Austin. But like, I needed a school to finish some credits at. Like, I just told you how long it took me to get. It took 5.5 years to get those 2 undergrads, but I was really hell bent on finishing this master's degree in 2 years. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to send some notes to like other jazz departments and see if I can come finish. UT wasn't interested. They were already too far into their semester, but NYU took me in. So I went to NYU for a semester. And then I had promised this girl I would move to Austin, and I did shortly after that. Possibly a mistake. I mean, I love Austin. It's been the best possible fit of all these places. I just wish I had had more of a chance in New York. Like I was, they have 2 music schools, and for whatever reason, for my history credit, I was like, I'm going to take history of ethnomusicology on the academic side. So there's the academic part of the music school, and there's the performance music school. And jazz department guy was like, I don't know why you'd want to do that, but go right ahead, pal. Do whatever you want. And that course involved more reading than the entirety of my undergraduate education. I swear.
Wow.
It was a lot. So that scared me the heck away from the ethno field. I thought in the back of my mind maybe I could go for a doctorate in that later, but I think like after I finished the degree, like I moved to Austin, and then I wrote my comp exams remotely, and by that point I was just in love with Austin and joining bands and taking gigs and stuff, and eventually it turned out to be a really good fit. So
It's known as, one of the best music places to live in probably in the world, because there's a scene happening, and Toronto was very vibrant but really isn't, and nothing is at this point. But
Yeah.
just things have just it's not the same. So can you play, let's say pre-pandemic, could you play 6 nights a week with different bands? No problem.
Yeah, I mean, if that is what you wanted to do with yourself, you could do that here.
Yeah.
There's definitely phases of my time here where I did do that. I don't know if you would love all the music, and there would probably be a lot of covers, and I don't know. There's a bit of everything. There's a strong country scene. I had my toes in that for a minute. I've also done the wedding band thing a lot. There's good money to be made. There are a lot of people getting married in Texas, so there's plenty of work with stuff like that if you're working with the right people. But
right around when you began the Hard Proof band,
was I in a
a few
wedding
years after
band
you
then?
arrived. '08, was it '08 you started that?
Yeah, I mean, I got here New Year's Eve '05. So
Cool.
started in '06. I think I feel like the first gig I got called for in Austin was a crazy old guitar player who had a band called Cat's Meow, and Cat was Cat Edmondson. She's a big famous jazz singer appearing in Woody Allen movies now, but she was like just starting to gig out at that point. And I mean, later I had a friend play on her record that got produced by Phil Ramone. So like,
Wow.
That didn't last very long. I always assumed they stopped calling me because I wasn't smiling very much back then. You never know. But like, it seems like my whole time here, I've always been working regularly with like at least one singer, like doing restaurants and private gigs and things, like jazz singers. Like, kind of really, if I have any brush chops, it's because I moved here and played a lot of restaurants. Like, got a lot of restaurant brush chops.
Yep.
But yeah, man, I've always had something like that, and then I think like. Actually, I know in '06 I left town for a while to tour with a harmonica player from New Orleans. So I went out and found out about the blues worlds intimately. That was different. Really sweet bunch of guys. Played the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. That was a little nuts.
Wow. That's awesome. What a scene that would be. And I would love to do that. I wish I had more than one lifetime, because I would go and I would want to immerse myself for several years in a bunch of different scenes like that, like the jazz world, like the Latin world. As a drummer, man, it is just a feast. You're out there. And you could spend we spend our whole lives, chasing different musical avenues, and it's part of the allure and part of the fun, because I couldn't play just one thing because I would be bored to death.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, when did you? We talked about your Tony exposure.
Yeah.
When did you actually start playing Gretsch drums on you? And you have to have this grip there. There we go. When you talk about Gretsch drums, Cindy Blackman was doing that, and I'm like, man, I just love her.
I have terrible traditional grip, so this is horrible.
When did you get Gretsch drums of your own?
Okay, this is a weird story. Let me see if I could get him in the shot. Is that in the shot?
Oh,
These are weird ones. These are very Gretsch drums.
Those are renowned.
They're renowned, but they're 6-ply hickory.
Hickories. Yeah.
So.
Oh, baby. Yeah.
I said earlier I wrote for Modern Drummer for a long time actually. But so at WVU on the marching band, they finally let me play a snare drum, and they put this kid from Maryland next to me named Mike Dawson. So I don't know if you know him from the internet
Yeah.
or from Modern Drummer.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I marched next to him in drumline, and we became friends eventually. And I talked to that guy every week. So before he was keeping all the reviews to himself, he would sometimes hire out reviews to other people. He said, "Do you want to review this Gretsch kit? It's pure wood hickory." I was like, "Yeah, I'll check that out." And I got it. Wasn't this kit? It was the smaller one. They did 35 each of one of two setups. So there was the one I had to review was like 20, 10, 12, 14, the 6.5 deep snare, and it was. I don't know if you've ever played on a hickory drum.
No.
They must be tough to work with or something. Like nobody really dabbles in it regularly, but they're different. They sound a lot more like an 80s Japanese kind of birch kit than your typical Gretsch thing. But
Right.
they're good for a lot of things. And this is a cliche, but I swear several engineers have told me like I don't have to do any EQ on these things. Like they're super focused, and like I always told myself I would get like a beater Japanese birch 80s kit, like a Superstar recording custom, just to leave in cases and put in a trailer for a wedding gig or whatever. Like, but I'm like this is that sound, but it's more so. So
Right.
those are like hyper focused, and I have pretty thick heads on them right now. I'm trying that out, and they're good. This is just like a home recording experiment right now, but that was technically the first one. Part of the reason I decided I had to have one for Pumas was our first residency was at a club called Sea Boys, which is it's owned by the same guy who owns the Continental Club and the Continental Gallery upstairs. So at the gallery and at Sea Boys, the house kit, they're both stop sign, badge, champagne sparkle, I think. So that was like the original gigging sound of Black Pumas. So I was like, I kind of want that, but didn't really have a lot of money to throw around. I have a ton of Slingerland shells. So my touring kit for like the first year and a half was Slingerland 60s and 70s, just Niles badge. Actually, if you watch our Austin City Limits episode, that's like all Slingerland. So all bought like one drum at a time. And I think there's a 6.5 chrome over brass that Mike Dawson gave me for my wedding. That's the main one. But I was like, I want something like, I'm in love with this maple poplar 3-ply thing. Like, I think it's perfect. So I started checking out the broadcasters. Actually, the band's first out-of-town festival, I had to wake up real early after the first night and interview Jason McGarrett from Death Cab for Cutie.
Cool.
And pretty great interview, and was definitely half asleep, but he was raving about the broadcasters and really talking up this 6.5 aluminum drum. And I was like, the more I started reading about those and listening to sound files, I was like, those seem like the right tools for this job. Like, I think those are the things I want. And then eventually a friend got me in touch with Andrew Shreve at Gretsch, and eventually he got back. So, it was like the first or only company I reached out to, and it was like, you want to play Gretsch? We could do this. I'm like, well, yes, I do. Let's absolutely do that.
Wow. So are those the Slingerlands on the record, or is it your Gretsch kit?
The record was made before I had the Gretsch deal. And Adrian has like a 60s Rogers at his studio.
Okay.
So that's mostly what's on the record. The ones I played were on the Rogers. There's a couple other players on the record. JJ Johnson from Tedeschi Trucks. He's an Austin guy. He's on a few tracks.
Yeah.
Pretty sure he's playing the Rogers. And my friend John Speece from Grupo Fantasma and Brownout. He's on a few tracks. And just the way Adrian works, it's like you just kind of show up and play what he's got, and slowly I've left a bunch of drums at his studio already, and just randomly talking him into buying various snare drums and things. So
this is good. So how did the Black Pumas gig come about for you?
So I knew Adrian. He had produced a few songs for Hard Proof. Like we did a pair of singles with him. If nothing else, Hard Proof has been like just this great networking opportunity. Like every recording we've done with a different engineer, producer, guy. So I think those are still some of my favorite tracks we've done, were the ones we did with him. But I met him through that, and then I know I subbed once in a band of his called the Echocentrics, and I subbed another time in Brownout, and then he just called me. It was like January of 2018. He called me and said, or no, he didn't even call me. It was just a text. It's like, I got this psychedelic soul project. We have a residency at Seaboys for 2 months. Singer's pretty good. Do you want to try this? I was like, yes. I didn't even listen to it. Like,
wow.
I know him and I know what he likes, and usually he puts together strong stuff. So it's like, didn't really require much thought. And then I listened to, he Dropboxed me some recordings, and I listened to it, and I heard Eric's voice, and I was like,
wow.
Probably gonna have to quit a job or something soon. And then like after a couple rehearsals, Eric was like, we're gonna learn some of Eric's songs, because they had about half an album kind of done, but none of them were Eric's songs. So he brings in Colors, and I'm like, wow, that's like an anthem. This dude's got anthems. So, and then that first residency, the first week it was like our friends and some family, and it was pretty packed out. But then by the third week, like there's a line.
Wow.
Like, there's a line to get in down the block. Like after that, it just became a series of record industry cliches, but also really good management. Like their management has just been crushing from day one, and they looped that in pretty early. So there were a lot of good festivals and some good run of support dates. So
what do you have planned for the group? What's happening? You have some, I saw some on your website, I think it was, or the Pumas website. There are some gigs happening, correct? Soon.
Yeah. At the end of this month, we are playing Stubbs Barbecue 5 nights in a row. That was originally supposed to happen, like, I think, fall of our lockdown year, and then they kept rescheduling it.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong about that, but just another ridiculous cliche. It's like, well, we sold out 2 nights. Let's add a 3rd night, and then the 4th night, and then in the last couple months they added the 5th night. It's like, wow, that's a little nuts. It's
incredible.
Not the biggest venue in town, but it's pretty bananas.
And so the group was Grammy nominated for a single. What was it nominated for?
2 years ago, we were nominated for Best New Artist.
Wow.
So yeah, and that was weird. Like we were on tour in England, and we found out, and we were just waiting outside the van for something else, just getting done with the radio taping, and it was like, wow, that really real Best New Artist, real that's like a big name category. That's nuts. So there was that, and then the next year, like somebody at the record company is really smart because they pointed out to me, like when we got that first nomination, technically we hadn't released a single yet. So eventually they did release Colors as a single for like the next year of eligibility. So I don't know who's making those kind of moves or plans or whatever, but huzzah to them. So then we had, what was it? So last year we were nominated for Song of the Year and Record of the Year. So
That's phenomenal. And
yeah,
it sounds like it's familiar music, but it sounds fresh. My son, who's 21, is into a lot of older kind of music. He listens to a lot of blues music from the 50s, and I'm like, have you heard of these guys? And he goes, no. So I sent him, and he's like, I really dig this. And then my
yeah,
neighbor, who's been in the music business for many years, he was 76, said, I love it. That singer's great. The band is great. Who are these people?
yeah.
So it's a wide appeal, and it sounds like real people playing real instruments. Man, how about
Yeah,
that, right? And singing. His voice is pretty phenomenal, that's for sure.
yeah. And we have these ladies from a band called the Soul Supporters. They're the
Yeah.
background singers. They're also dynamite.
Yeah.
I don't know. Adrian definitely assembled a great team. And I mean, it's supposed to be like soul music, but made by people who clearly grew up with hip hop. So
Interesting.
I think when I was trying to like compile I mean, you play all these different kinds of music, so like I look at it as you're making up a character, like your drummer character for this band. So I'm like, well, what is Adrian like? I mean, we're the same age, so I know we have all these same hip hop things we grew up with, and I know he likes like some soul music, and I know he likes film music. So it's like just kind of landed on like I'm gonna try to sound more like a hip hop producer, like a beat maker for the whole thing. So like that and a heavy dose of like Willie Hall. I don't,
Yeah.
Willie Hall from Stax, and
Yeah.
he was in the Bar Hayes and Isaac Hayes' band for a while. I was also, for whatever, I was on a rabbit hole with Joe Tex. You ever listen to Joe Tex?
I can't say that I have.
Okay, now I have to look up his drummer's name because there was this video I kept watching, like someone in Amsterdam gave Joe Tex a TV show. He sounds a lot like James Brown, but he's got his own thing. What the heck was his drummer's name? Clyde Williams.
Not sure.
If anybody's listening to this and can tell me more about Clyde Williams, I want to know all about Clyde Williams.
Yeah.
If you look up the Joe Tex show on YouTube, if you see the first song from that, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Like, the guy just has like this freight train impactful groove going on. It's a thing of beauty. But I mean, I'm always going on little rabbit holes like that with random players, and
Yeah.
one of my favorite
I was
things to do.
surprised. I looked on the Gretsch site to read about your bio, read up on your bio, and your
Yeah.
influences were. I'm like Willie Hall.
Mhm.
I can't say that I've seen anybody else, mention that name, and that's pretty awesome too. That you go back and you do the research So and that's amazing. I
Well,
love those
if you
rabbit holes too.
if you listen to him on Hot Buttered Soul, like
Mm.
I, it's funny. I remember reading a Rolling Stone review of like a reissue of that record sometime in my college years, and the journalist said something to the effect of like an entire generation of black children were conceived to this record. I was like, well, I guess I need to check this record out. But and then I got it and I was just like, the drums from the minute go just they're so perfect and spot on, and just I have ripped him off in every possible style. I just gave away my whole game. Shit.
That's great. That's great advice. That's what I love about doing these interviews. Is this is episode 51, so I've chatted with 50 previous guests, and I love everybody's story
Oh
because it's different,
wow.
has similarities, but and I love learning from where people came,
Yeah.
and what your journey's all about. I love I love that. That's fascinating. What did I? So besides the renowned hickory kit, which is cool, you rarely see those. I've seen them come up for sale a few times up here, and I'm thinking, should I? Shouldn't I? Yeah, divorced.
It's
Um,
it's so not. It is very un-Gretsch, I'll
right,
admit, but it is
right.
amazing. And I don't like. There's some grumpy old men out there who will be like, "That's not made in America" or whatever. But like, I like those renowns. Like, there was a renown as my backliner on this stream we taped the other night. They were perfect. Like, I don't care where those things are made. Like, it's good stuff.
Yep. They've got that recipe. I've got two renowned kits in here, and absolutely, they track great. They sound great. What are your broadcasters? Let's talk a little bit about your broadcasters.
Let me see if I can bring one into the shot. So I got their Black Satin Flame. Actually, I'll lose an ear monitor if I do that. Let's see. Will it come in? There's a bass
Woo!
drum.
Oh, hello.
So 14 by 22 and 8 by 13, 16 by 16.
Goodness.
And like a big dummy, I think. Can you see the bronze snare? I got the bronze USA Custom.
Yeah, I have one too. Good taste. Great drum.
That's an amazing rock drum. I got a vintage Emperor on it. It's just it's so beefy. Like a dummy, I did not buy a matching snare with the broadcasters, but like my last two times in LA, SIR sent out a white marine pearl kit with an 8-lug 6.5 broadcaster snare, and now I know I need to get one of those that matches my kit. Like, I was really not in like a wood snare phase when I ordered it, but
right.
I think I need one. I'm gonna ask for a 7 by 14. I like 7 by 14s when I can find them. What other? And I have like a 5 by 14, just chrome over brass. I crank that up and use that on the left side in the Pumas.
Wow.
There's the matching one for the Renown. And I have a weird one. This is like a $40 eBay grab. It's a 6.5 by 15. Clearly drilled for Gretsch lugs. If you look at the bottom of the shell, it looks like a like the Jasper layup. You know about like maple gum. What I said just made no sense if there are any non-drummers listening. But there's a sticker inside that says it's from Jack's Drum Shop in Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And Jack was either the grandfather or father-in-law of the Vader Empire, and he was also a Gretsch artist. I found out, so
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that is a Gretsch drum, but it's
Wow.
weird, and I don't know. That's the only 15 I own, so it's not. It's good for like rootsy kind of things. What
Wow.
else?
That's a nice variety. You said you tune the chrome over brass drum like a
Yeah,
4160. You have it on your
yeah,
left side.
yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'd like to
That'd
see
be-
that. Man, I hope you guys come to Toronto or somewhere where it's drivable that I can come and see you guys play, because man, that would be an experience seeing that band. So hopefully things happen. You kind of expand your traveling, even some of the northern states. I'd drive and come and see it. That'd be awesome.
I'm sure we have a Toronto date at some point. Maybe I
That
can tell you.
that would be cool.
Um,
Yeah.
and then like the aluminum, the 6.5 aluminum is kind of the main snare in the driver's seat lately. I really like that one. Glad Jason told me about it.
Yeah, that's a beauty drum for sure. I keep eyeing one on since I signed onto Gretsch myself. I've been looking at going, okay, which one? That's why I bought the USA Custom Bronze drum. Mike Johnston picked that snare drum out of the one
Yeah,
campaign that they had a few years ago, and I'd never
right,
played
right.
it. And I'm like, I'm gonna buy that. So I ordered it, and it came, and
Yeah.
it's wonderful. I totally dig that drum.
No, I swap that out for the aluminum sometimes, but I put it up yesterday and I was like, wow, I would really like somebody to call me to make a rock record right now, because this is kind of the ultimate rock snare drum. And I got a whole list of all the things I need to order next. Like, I was making a spreadsheet the other day of like, here's what's next. When can I put money aside for this garbage?
That's wonderful.
I don't own a copper snare. Like, I got the bronze because I was like, I love brass snare drums, but I already have a bunch of them. So I was like, that seems like maybe the next kind of step. And then but we played the NFL draft last week, and the back line had a 6.5 bell brass.
Oh,
And I was like, that's been on the list. I'm gonna need to own that. That was pretty stellar, pretty surprising. Like, wasn't really prepared for that. But when you're a Gretsch artist and that's your backline deal, like you arrive to really nice surprises like that.
that's wonderful. I've talked to many Gretsch artists, and once they've played those on backlines, they order them. You know, I had
Yeah.
Sean Horton was on here last year, and several other drummers. They're like, yep, the bell brass, that's on the list too. But I play a lot of theaters, and I think the bell brass might be a little much. Although I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe not.
This was an outdoor venue, so maybe that's why it worked so well. Like it cut plenty, but not too much,
Right.
and had I wasn't knowing what kind of stick feel to expect under something that substantial, but it just felt really, really good.
Yeah, I use my bronze for outdoor shows. That's a great outdoor drum as well, I found. But
Yeah.
man, that is amazing. So what's happening for 21, 22? What's going on? So you've got what's going on with the Pumas, and what else do you have happening?
So with Pumas, we have those shows at Stubbs. That's 5 nights in a row on the road is one thing, but 5 nights in a row at home when your 6-year-old gets you up at 7 a.m. I'm trying to figure out how that's going to work out. So I might be more exhausted after that than on the road. I think there's a few private things, but touring really isn't going to start until like early July, it looks like.
Wow.
And then it almost seems like a normal year after that for the rest of the year. And then
That's good.
and there's sort of I would say we're in like demo stages with the record. I've done a few things. Like Adrian has his own studio, so that's really nice to just be able to go in and not have to set anything up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about what Pumas are doing.
Hmm.
It's just about to get scary with travel again, but I think everybody's vaccinated now. I got
Wow.
vaccinated by mid-March.
Really? Man,
Yeah.
it's slow up here. Terribly slow because we didn't make our vaccines. We got them from you guys. Right
Oh,
from
wow.
Austin, actually. Yeah. So I go for my first one Monday. So that's good to hear. We're supposed to travel to the States in October to play a few shows. So,
Yeah. I
and so
mean,
I'm not as worried. So,
me getting mine were both dumb luck. Like,
right.
I'm 1B status, meaning I have a health issue, but so I was sort of in front of the line, but it was a matter of like, so I got the first shot at University of Texas, and then they were like, okay, come back on this date for your second shot. I was like, can't do that. That's Grammy week. I'll be in LA. Can't do that. You got another date? And they're like, no, really. That's the only date we have for the Moderna shot. And then I was like, okay, I guess after the Grammys, I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. and check pharmacy websites every morning. But somebody in my neighborhood Facebook group will.
Oh, just as we are wrapping up. What a fascinating story. So far, we're just about at the end, but let's wrap things up with Steve here. So, oops, here we go. Add you two. There we go.
Ah,
Aha, there we go. We're back. You summoned on your neighborhood Facebook, you were saying?
oh, yeah. I don't know if they worked in like my neighborhood pharmacy or what, but they were like, if you can get to this grocery store in the next 15 minutes and you need the second shot, you can do it. I was like, that's me. I'll be there. Let's do this. So
That is fantastic.
just dumb luck both times. Really, really glad to get it.
Good for you. Good for you. My age just came available yesterday. I'm 54, so 50 people 50 and over because it was forever. It was 80s and 70s and 60s and whatnot. So that's good. It must make you feel a little bit more at ease that you know you're not that you're protected to a degree and that you're not going to die from it. Or if you do can get it, then you won't suffer as many have. So I'm really
Yeah.
impressed that the States is definitely kicked butt as far as just getting people vaccinated, which is it wasn't looking like it was going to be that way, a few months back, but that's awesome. So that's good that you're going to be busy and playing drums and for a Grammy nominated artist. And I'm going to keep a lookout on the web and see if there are some Toronto dates. I'd just love to come and see you do your thing, man. And a lot of fun. So besides that, and is Hard Proof got anything happening, or are you saying that you're still not sure exactly where you're going to be going with that?
We're trying to figure out what to do next. We back in the first week of the year, our conga player passed away. He had a bunch of health issues ongoing, so
Right.
So we're trying to figure out what, and also a trumpet player that moved to Colorado. So we're looking into it, trying to figure out what the next lineup is going to look like, and really trying to make it just something totally crushing when we come back. I know we got one date. We have a date booked in August, I know, and then we have a wedding of all things. That's the third
awesome.
wedding it's not. You'd be surprised. Some people actually want an Afrobeat band to play at their wedding. Um,
Cool.
so we got that, and we're just moving very slowly like that. We're technically, I guess we have a label, and we should probably sell more records, so we should be doing things, but um, it moves as fast as we want, and I mean, having a 10-person band or more is like always an
Crazy.
impractical thing. So it's like we never had any. I think we've probably lasted so long because we did not force ourselves to get in a van for weeks at a time. Like somebody would have stabbed somebody by now if we had tried to do that, you know. Um, but yeah, we have some material to release, I think, and just trying to figure out a memorial for Tony, our conga player, as well. He was
Right.
he was a real character. He was from the Lower East Side and of New York, and learned congas from like people on the Fania label. Like he's got real salsa credit in his background, and so trying to figure out how to move forward without him and without our trumpet player. And
Yeah.
so that's, I guess, in rebuilding stages. But since it's like we've always had some subs, like it's Austin, everybody's in 19 bands. You can never get everybody there the same night, but
Right.
yeah. So slowly getting back into that, and whatever other things people call me up for, just always going to be teaching and recording stuff.
It's fantastic, man. Thank you so much. Your journey was unbelievable and just so varied, and you know you got a lot more to go and a lot more things to do and a lot more music to play. And I appreciate you taking the time, you know, with your taking away your time from your son and the other things that you're doing. So very grateful for you to share all that you did, and I want to thank you so much, and proud to be having you on this on episode 51, and proud to be a fellow Gretsch artist, man. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to put you on a list in Toronto so you can catch a show.
Yeah,
hopefully in the next year.
Yes, sir. All right. You take care, everybody. Be well, and we will see you next week. Bye now.